Okay, this is my last podcast of the day because I have to go sue some people. You think these podcasts pay for themselves? You're certainly not paying for them. You know how much money I've gotten in contributions? Zero. So, I'm self-sustaining at this point in time, so I have to bill my clients, which means I have to actually act like a lawyer from time to time. So, speaking of which, my phone's been ringing off the hook. What do you think about the Trump indictment? So I gotta be honest, because I look at this as a lawyer, not through a political lens, and I'm not impressed. And I'll just give you a quick overview as to why I'm not. So, Mr. Bragg, who's, I hate to say it, but his name sort of suits him, is out there with this big deal indictment, and the whole world is watching. So he comes out and he says he gave money to conceal this affair with Stormy Daniels, and I don't know if it was the other woman is involved. I think so, yes, because it also involved this issue of National Enquirer, which I discussed in a previous podcast because of the guy's name. So he said that he did these things to conceal other crimes. Now he has to do that because my understanding, and there's like a 2-year statute of limitations for misdemeanors. So even though he probably would clearly have a misdemeanor under New York law, he's too late. He should have filed that already. He didn't. No one did. So they waited and waited until it was too late, and now he has to tie this otherwise misdemeanor to a felony. So if the concealment was done in furtherance of a felony, then this can be a felony as well. So he didn't state what the felony was, nor the basis for that felony. He just made some statement to the effect that, well, it could be based on New York tax law, it could be based on New York campaign laws, it could be based on federal campaign laws, and I don't know if he had another one there or not, maybe federal tax laws. So the first problem you have is on the federal side, is that's apparently never been done before. So he'd be breaking new grounds. It doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong, but when you're going after a president of the United States, a former president of the United States, for the first time in the history of this country, you should pretty much have your ducks in a row and not be trying a novel theory that's never been tried before. That's my opinion. I wouldn't have done it, and Cy Vance didn't do it. Nobody has done this. This fellow Bragg decided that he's going to do this on his own. And if you recall, I had a previous podcast, and I was critical of him. And I said, I suspect that he may just be doing this so he can be the first one, he can get publicity politically in Manhattan, he's probably on safe ground. So I suspected his motives weren't pure, but I didn't say they weren't. I said, let's wait and see what the indictment says. Well, now we've seen it. And it's substantially lacking in that there's no stated basis for a tie-in to any particular federal or state laws. He's given us sort of a litany of things it might be. But on the federal side, that's really iffy, never been done before. There's a very good chance the court won't allow it because you have constitutional issues there. Now, you could argue that, well, state laws relating to federal campaigns, as it relates to the college, where you get the state votes are tallied, the electoral college, that the way those elections are run is a matter of state law, even though it's for a federal office, just like for the Senate. So, because the theory was that electors are elected from the state, just as a senator is elected from the state. In those days, senators weren't elected from the state, but the electors were selected by, in those days, the state representatives from the different houses of Congress in the various states. So you could argue that that's really a matter of New York state law. And then the other part is, well, what if this was, this was a New York tax evasion, because he claimed that the monies that were paid for this porn star and the other matters with National Enquirer, that those were done for business purposes, for the business of the corporation, not for Donald Trump's personal use. Well, if it turns out that these were done to kill these stories, that's not a business expense. If he made that a business expense and took that off his taxable income, then that could be a violation of federal tax laws. It could be a violation of New York State tax laws. So that sounds like the strongest, at least as far as tying it to a state statute violation. Say, well, he defrauded the government out of taxes that were owed to the state of New York by claiming as a tax deduction expenses that were intended to cover up a sordid affair. Well, what's wrong with that theory? If something that jumps right out at you. If Trump is guilty of violating New York state tax law, why didn't he charge him with violating New York state tax law? Why do this roundabout way of going after it with this cause of action relating to business disclosures in furtherance of a felony, without also charging him for that felony? So, and no explanation was forthcoming about that. And I don't think he took any questions, so nobody could even ask him that question. But reasonable lawyers are certainly asking that question. And so that undercuts his credibility, with me at least, right from the start. I don't think he has a state cause of action to which he can tie this, the hush money payments. So if he doesn't, then he has to rely on a federal statute and say, well, of course, on federal law, he can't charge them. But what about this thing that I was talking about with the Electoral College? So you may have a question of, it's federal law, but there's also state law that governs elections. Well, you have the same question. If Trump violated New York state law as it relates to campaign financing, then why didn't he charge him with that? And also charge him with the hush money, because it was done in furtherance of this other felony. So he's got two possible felonies, both of which he said might be used as the tie-in to elevate this misdemeanor to a felony, and yet he hasn't charged him with either felony. So at a minimum, you have to say, why? What's going on with them? Give reasonable minds. You think I'm the only lawyer that's noticed this? And I'm not a Trump supporter by any means. But I am a lawyer, and I do care that the law is carefully followed, and I also just, common sense tells you that these are just really puzzlements. And now you've got the last thing was did he violate federal tax law? Well, that's what as far as we know, I don't even think that the Justice Department is investigating Trump for any tax issues relating to Stormy Daniels. They may be, but we haven't heard of any, and I think we know what they're pursuing. They're pursuing the documents at Mar-a-Lago. They're pursuing the attempt to get Mike Pence to throw the election. Those things we know they're investigating. We don't know of anything, I don't know of anything, maybe some of you do, as to any claims or any investigations being made against Donald Trump for tax evasion based on Stormy Daniels. So if the Attorney General's not pursuing it, why is a New York City prosecutor pursuing federal campaign finance issues when the Attorney General of the United States is seemingly completely disinterested? So when you step back at it, I have to say, I'm puzzled by this whole thing. I don't want to see Trump walk away, and I think there's a pretty good chance he's going to get nailed on these actual federal statutory violations. But why pursue him in state court on such iffy theories? So, I'm not one of those saying, well, Trump's being persecuted and the liberals are after him and out to get him and this and the other. But I do say to myself anyway, and to you, if you're listening, that I think there's a problem with what this Mr. Bragg is doing. So that's all I want to say about this whole issue for now. And so those of you who want to know what my thoughts are, quit calling me. Read my podcast. Oh, and while you're at there, uh, do business with our advertisers. What are you talking about? George, I hired you to get advertisers. Look, Santos, I know you're busy, okay? I know you have lots of other things on your plate. But, you know, if your name is George Santos, you should be able, based upon what you've told me about your history, you should have no trouble rounding up a bunch of advertisers for this program. You're telling me we don't have any ad money at all? Nothing? Not even for dog food? It's disgraceful. You, sir, I'm thinking of reducing your salary. Well, I'm thinking of reducing the salary I would be giving you. You know, you're just like everybody else that works here. When am I going to get paid? What a bunch of whinies. Whatever happened to patriotism? Goodbye.